From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the news at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Ayotunde Balogun.
Hello and welcome. Tonight, presidential candidate for the African Democratic Congress, Atiku Abubakar, meets with major rival and former Rivers State Governor Rotimi Amechi hours after winning the party's nomination to contest the 2027 presidential election. Troops of the Guards Brigade reiterate their resolve to intensify the fight against terrorists, bandits and kidnappers within their area of responsibility. Authorities suspend all Durbar activities in Kano following rising tensions in the metropolis. And negotiators for the United States and Iran reached tentative deal to extend ceasefire for 60 days.
On business news, the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises calls for urgent power sector reforms and stronger support for manufacturers to further boost Nigeria's economic growth.
On sports news tonight, Yannick Sinner bows out of the French Open in the biggest show.
And from Abuja, still in the spirit of the Eid al-Kabir celebration, travelers in the nation's capital expressed concern over the rising spate of insecurity and the cost of premium motor spirit in the country.
What appears to be a major reconciliation effort following the African Democratic Congress presidential primary has seen former Vice President Atiku Abubakar visit former Rivers State Governor Rotimi Amechi at his Abuja residence. The meeting comes amid tensions surrounding the recently concluded ADC primary that produced Alhaji Abubakar as the party's presidential flag bearer for the 2027 elections. Mr. Amechi and fellow aspirant Mohammed Hayatuddin had rejected the outcome of the exercise, describing the process as lacking credibility. The ADC presidential candidates, who arrived with a delegation that include former Sokoto State Governor Aminu Tambuwal, former ADC National Chairman Ralph Mosu, and other party officials, held closed-door discussions with Mr. Amechi. The visit took place less than 24 hours after the primary, with both Amechi and Hayatuddin boycotted at the collation stage in protest. In a post on his X handle after the meeting, Alhaji Abubakar said both men held frank and warm discussions on Nigeria's challenges, including rising economic hardship and insecurity. He adds that the conversation reflected a shared concern about the need for patriotic engagement and collective efforts to help find solutions to the country's worsening situation. In the meantime, members of the PDP, led by Tanimu Turaki, have fixed Saturday, May the 30th, for the ratification of the nomination of former President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan as the party's presidential candidate for the 2027 general elections. The Turaki group had earlier announced that the former president was granted a waiver during a screening exercise for aspirants who purchased nomination forms to contest various positions ahead of the forthcoming general elections. Although former President Jonathan has not publicly declared his intention to run, a federal high court in Abuja earlier this week struck out a suit challenging his eligibility to contest in 2027. In a statement signed by Mr. Inyeme Mobong, the group said the Saturday meeting will formally ratify Dr. Jonathan's nomination to fly the PDP presidential ticket for 2027, despite the group not being recognized by INEC as the authentic leadership of the party. Meanwhile, the National Working Committee of the PDP, led by Mr. Abdurrahman Mohammed and recognized by the electoral umpire, has also announced former Cross River State governorship candidate Senator Sandy Ono as its presidential candidate for the 2027 elections. The PDP continues to grapple with a prolonged leadership crisis that has dragged through the courts up to the Supreme Court, with the dispute still unresolved despite multiple rulings. In Benue, controversy appears to be trailing the APC governorship primary election conducted in the state on Thursday, May the 21st this year, as an aggrieved aspirant, Jeffrey Kuron, is calling for the cancellation of the poll, having filed a petition before the appeals committee of the party. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, Mr. Kuron claims the election was neither credible, transparent, nor reflective of democratic standards expected within a ruling political party. He alleged that what transpired was a grave subversion of internal democracy and a deliberate manipulation of a process that ought to have reflected the genuine will of party members across the 276 council wards and 23 local government areas of Benue State.
I challenge anyone claiming victory in that exercise to publicly provide authentic video and pictorial evidences showing actual accreditation, voting, counting, and collation processes across the 276 council wards of Benue State. Several disturbing irregularities have since emerged from the purported results announced, including allocation of votes to aspirants whose supporters and agents were not even present in several wards. Instances where I overwhelmingly won, but firstly, they recorded me as having 0 votes. Inclusion of names of persons who reportedly did not even participate in the screening process or were duly cleared by the party to contest. Announcement of fabricated figures from locations where election materials never arrived and voting never occurred. These actions represent a direct assault on democratic credibility and internal party democracy. Following the declaration of the disputed results, I immediately activated the internal dispute resolution mechanism of the APC in line with the timetable that was presented and the guidelines presented by our great party, the APC.
Still talking politics, former Deputy President of the Senate, Ovie Omo-Agege, has officially defected to the Nigeria Democratic Congress, NDC, ahead of the 2027 general elections. In a statement issued today, the former Delta Central Senator said the move followed weeks of consultations with political associates, supporters, and stakeholders across the country. Senator Omo-Agege described the NDC as a people-driven platform committed to accountability, inclusion, and true federalism. He also expressed appreciation to prominent party leaders, including Senator Siraki Dixon, Moses Cleopas, Governor Peter Obi, and Senator Rabiu Kwankwaso for their commitments to building what he called a credible alternative for Nigerians. The former lawmaker further declared his intention to contest the Delta Central senatorial seat in 2027, saying the decision was based on calls from constituents seeking effective representation. A former Speaker of the Delta State House of Assembly, Right Honorable Victor Oche, has resigned from the All Progressives Congress after nearly a decade in the party. In a statement addressed to his supporters and the people of Delta State, Right Honorable Oche said the decision followed wide consultations and deep reflection. He noted that since joining the APC back in 2016, he had contributed significantly to strengthening the party through grassroots mobilization, youth inclusion, and political engagement across the state. The former lawmaker, however, said leadership must continue to evolve to reflect fairness, inclusion, and the aspirations of the people, adding that his decision was not driven by bitterness or resentment. He assured his supporters that he remains committed to democratic ideals and public service as he continues his political journey outside the APC. Away from politics now, troops of the Guards Brigade have again reiterated their resolve not to relent in the fight against terrorists, bandits, and kidnappers within their area of responsibility. The Commander Guards Brigade, Brigadier General Adibisi Onosoya, gave the assurance during a Salah luncheon with troops of the Abaji Quick Response Group in the FCT, Abuja.
Abaji, a border town between Abuja and Kogi State, is one of the area councils within the Federal Capital Territory under the jurisdiction of the Guards Brigade. Troops of the Quick Response Group are in charge of this area as they conduct day and night patrols and operations to ensure the safety of lives and property in the area. As part of the Eid al-Kabir celebrations, the Guards Brigade commander visits the frontline troops to appreciate their sacrifices and dedication to duty.
So I want to urge all of you here, the officers and soldiers especially, not to rest on your oars. To whom much is given, much is expected. I expect this to spur you on to continue to do your best, remain professional troops, as you have always been, remain committed to your duties. Nigeria expects a lot from you, and we cannot afford to disappoint the country.
The presence of the unit has continued to make a significant impact in tackling security challenges in the area and adjoining Kogi State, just as efforts are also being made to address challenges facing the troops and improve their working environment.
Over the past 2 months, several arrests have been made, and beyond the conduct of their operations, they have also been able to address a lot of farmers' herders clashes. During this period, the rainy season, we had always been recording a lot of farmers' herders clashes in these axis. But because of the nature of their operations, they have been very proactive in the conduct of their operations, and they have been able to thwart a lot of such occurrences.
As the commander wines and dines with the troops, he attributes the successes recorded in ongoing operations to the synergy between troops and other security agencies. He, however, urged the personnel to sustain the momentum in the fight against terrorists and other criminal elements.
In Katsina, the state government has reacted to the arrest of Mr. Nura Garwa, the alleged mastermind of a kidnapping syndicate accused of abducting an 8-year-old boy in the Sardauna Estate area of Katsina metropolis. The government clarified that Mr. Garwa, a former senior special assistant on community development to Governor Dikko Rada, had earlier been suspended from office before pursuing his political ambition. According to a statement issued by the State Commissioner for Information and Culture, Bala Zango, the suspension followed allegations of misconduct linked to the diversion of empowerment materials meant for communities in Batsari local government area under the state's community development program. The statement noted that the suspension took effect before Mr. Garwa declared interest in contesting for a seat in the Katsina State House of Assembly to represent Batsari constituency. Governor Dikko Rada described the allegations against the suspect as disturbing and unfortunate, particularly given his former public role and political background. The governor, however, reaffirmed his administration's commitment to tackling criminality across the state, stressing that no individual, regardless of status or political affiliation, would be protected from facing justice. Security authorities have suspended all Durbar activities in Kano following rising tension and fear of clashes between the 15th and 16th emirs, Aminu Ado Bayero and Mohammed Sanusi II. Both emirs had earlier announced plans to hold separate Salah Durbar celebrations, raising concerns over possible breakdown of law and order. The Kano State Police Command, in what it described as a proactive security measure, issued a directive banning any form of parallel Durbar procession across the state. Reacting to this decision on behalf of Emir Aminu Ado Bayero, the Serikin Dawaki Baba Alhaji Aminu Dan Angudi said the suspension is in full compliance with the police directive aimed at maintaining peace and stability.
Now, because of this security meeting that we had with them, and they told us the implications, and they want to maintain peace and order in this state. They don't want any crisis, especially now. This is the time is very wrong. Anything can happen. Therefore, they told us, this is the letter, both the Commissioner of Police and the Director SS wrote to us, saying that they have suspended all Durbar activities in Kano State. Therefore, we have accepted that, and we apologize for the inconveniences caused by our earlier statement. So we are praying to Almighty Allah so that we can have peace in this state.
Meanwhile, an uncle to Emir Mohammed Sanusi II, Alhaji Sanusi Abbas, has called on the government to end the prolonged Kano Emirate crisis, warning that continued delay could lead to serious consequences.
The issue is not late. This is something that has been lingering for over 2 years, and it's a problem which everybody is looking for a solution to, and that solution, a lasting one that we are looking for. At least since the government have not come up with the initial idea of bringing the two functions into a round table to resolve the matter, and it has taken the dimension of going to the court, up to the appeal court. It is important that we call on the government at least to respect the rule of law.
In part two, after the break, senior government officials hold strategic meeting in Lagos to discuss plans for Ebola response in the country. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you have just joined us, you're watching the News at 10 on Channels Television, broadcasting live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Presidential candidate for the African Democratic Congress, Atiku Abubakar, meets with major rival and former Rivers State Governor Rotimi Amechi hours after winning the party's nomination to contest the 2027 presidential election. Troops of the Guards Brigade reiterate their resolve to intensify the fight against terrorists, bandits and kidnappers within their area of responsibility. Authorities suspend all Durbar activities in Kano following rising tensions in the metropolis. And negotiators for the United States and Iran reached tentative deal to extend ceasefire for 60 days. President Bola Tinubu has hosted the leadership of the Senate at his residence in Lagos. The visit serves as a traditional Salah homage to the president following the Eid al-Kabir celebrations. Led by the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio, the high-level legislative team includes Deputy Senate President Jibrin Barau, Leader of the Senate Okpeyemi Bamidele, Senator Solomon Adiola and Senator Abdulaziz Yari, among others. Speaking to journalists shortly after meeting with the president, Senator Akpabio commended President Tinubu's efforts at repositioning the economy of the country as it reaffirms the National Assembly's support towards addressing issues such as insecurity.
He has done very well. There is no part of Nigeria today that you have the flag of any insurgent, whether Boko Haram, being hoisted. And then all those organized bomb blasts everywhere had been brought to an end. So the security services have done so well, but a lot still needs to be done. Because you know how it is. Nigeria is very vast. So with a population of over 240 million, whenever something happens, outsiders will not know that it's a very big country. So they will say, oh, Nigeria, oh, Nigeria, oh, Nigeria. But there are areas of soft targets, even on the fringes in terms of our boundaries. But we believe that working with him, the National Assembly can come up with a framework that will enable the states to also partake in securing the lives and the properties of the citizens. And that is in the area of the state police. And we are looking at ways of creating a positive and not a negative state police, and something that can have a national state police commission that will regulate the conduct of state policing and also promotion, training and all. So we will do our best to assist him in that direction. And sensitization also. The citizens also need to know that they have to watch out for bad acts in their societies, because they all know it's a very unfortunate situation, but we do know that the president is poised and the security services are poised. So that area will need serious improvement with all of us working together.
In health news, senior government officials today held a strategic meeting in Victoria Island, Lagos, to discuss what plans are in place for Ebola response in the country. The meeting, led by the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, also had in attendance the Director General of the Nigeria's Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Jide Idris, Minister of Interior Olubomi Tunjojo, Lagos State Commissioner for Health Professor Akin Abayomi, among others. Mr. Gbajabiamila says there will be possible restriction of flights from affected countries and isolate passengers with Ebola symptoms. The DG NCDC, Dr. Idris, warns that there is no cure or vaccine for Ebola virus, and health workers who are more exposed to it will be constantly enlightened about the virus as well.
We have a health scare, which is Ebola, and we all know what happened the last time. The cases are getting worse internationally and worldwide, and we don't want to leave anything to chance. There are 3-4 areas we looked at. We looked at the issue of possibility as of now of restricting flights from countries of interest. We looked at the possibilities of isolating passengers who may exhibit symptoms of Ebola. We looked at the possibility of isolating or using the cargo terminal to deal with the passengers that are coming in from those areas, and of course putting certain things in place, protocols in place. We believe that prevention is better than cure. And where some passengers slip through the cracks, then we must have ways of dealing with those with situations such as that.
We have our preparedness plan. It's not only limited to, it's covering all state governments, all ports of entry. And each state again is being gearing up again to at least addressing or detecting whenever this particular virus has no treatment, no vaccines. So it's public health measures that need to be done. Isolation, quick detection, public enlightenment, infection prevention and control. These are areas now we are concentrating on from NCDC. We sent out advisories. We're going to increase our communication skills and schemes again. And we're talking to healthcare workers because they are vulnerable, and what to do, how to protect themselves, how to treat these cases, especially symptomatically.
Out of the Minister of Interior, all points of entry will be guarded to prevent any outbreak in the country, and the Nigeria Immigration Service will be working closely with the NCDC to safeguard public health.
Ours is about border control, making sure that there are preventive measures at the level of entry, at the various points of entry. And I think Nigeria is prepared in terms of technology towards ensuring that decision-making mechanisms are properly structured and protocols are adhered to. So for me, I think it's about working as a team with NCDC, the state government, FAN, NCA, and everybody working together towards ensuring that this monster doesn't rear its ugly head in our country.
Let's head to the nation's capital now, and Victoria Longjohn is standing by to give us the latest from our Abuja studios. Hello, Victoria. Over to you.
Thank you, Ayo. As Muslims commemorate Eid al-Kabir, travelers in the nation's capital have expressed their dissatisfaction with concerns such as insecurity and the cost of petrol in the country. They urgently call on the federal government to intervene in these areas in order for them to feel the impact of the current administration. Our correspondent Kumbi Aboluwade reports.
Al-Kabir, celebrated every year by Muslim faithful, is one of the most important holidays in the Islamic calendar. It's a time adherents travel to spend the occasion with their loved ones. This is the Jabi Motor Park in the Federal Capital Territory. Travelers arrive and try to locate their specific vehicles. Bags and luggage get final checks as passengers await departure time. For some of these travelers who are Muslims, the trip will avail them moments with their loved ones as they join their counterparts across the globe to commemorate Eid al-Kabir. Though enthusiastic, there are some concerns about their daily expenses.
We thank God for everything for the brothers Muslims for this period of celebration. But the administration is very funny because people are finding it difficult, especially the transportation. Everything's high price. Now from here to Kaduna, 15,000 naira. Something of 3,000 before, 5,000 naira. It's a lot of people, they couldn't make it. Ram is very expensive now. Something of 50,000, 80,000 before. But mark my words, Ram now, 1,700,000, 500,000. So, civil servants, if you don't do any good job, where will you raise that money to buy Ram? But you have to manage the one you have, To go and see loved one, very, very important.
The situation is also the same for Mr. Oduola Oluwadamilare, who is a driver at the motor park. He speaks on the impact of the low patronage and calls on the government to intervene.
There is no patronage. People are traveling before. Compared to the price of the transportation now, it's not everybody that can avoid that money. Children, wife, all of them, they are there. So, and once there is no passenger, we cannot turn ourselves to money to, you understand? If they reduce fuel, the transportation price, at least, it will come down. So people were able to travel like before.
However, these passengers who acknowledge efforts of the federal government raise the issue of insecurity and urge the government to intensify efforts in this area.
The administration, they have been trying for over 3 years, but when it comes to how the country is, comes to the insecurity, all those things, I know it's very hard for we Nigerians to say we are not affected. We are affected and we are not happy about that. And I believe that the government knows what to do and they have to do it.
These passengers here, very hopeful spirit, have raised serious concerns and are calling the attention of the federal government to attend to issues like security so that they can feel the impact of the administration, which has the mandate to protect lives and properties. From the Jabi Motor Park in Abuja, Kumbi Aboluade, Channels Television News.
Now, still ahead on the news at 10, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises calls for urgent power sector reforms and stronger support for manufacturers to further boost Nigeria's economic growth. That's some business news. To join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. Every year on May 27, Nigeria pauses to celebrate its youngest citizens, which is usually defined by celebratory speeches and promises of a bright future. However, with over 24 million Nigerian children currently engaged in child labor and more than 18 million out of school, experts say it's time to move away from empty promises and focus on actual survival tools, from digital literacy to emotional resilience. Our next report pulls back the curtain on how to prepare our children for new global realities.
Children's Day is here. Naturally, the airwaves are flooded with standard footage of school march pasts and generic political speeches about the leaders of tomorrow.
You are the leaders, daughters, teachers, and innovators of tomorrow.
But given our current economic climate, tomorrow is arriving faster and harder than ever. Current realities and aggregate statistics paint a grim picture. Over 24.6 million Nigerian children aged 5 to 17 are engaged in child labor, with estimates showing over 18 million kids currently out of school. The theme for this year's 2026 Children's Day celebration is Future Now, promoting inclusion for every Nigerian child. If this generation is to do more than just survive, they must be prepared to out-innovate, out-endure and harness their potential despite staggering odds.
We need creative thinking, we need innovators, and all of these things start when a child is still young. You can introduce them to concepts and ideas through images, through simple words, through beautifully produced books, and also through activities that are attractive to them.
According to experts, Deliberate efforts must move away from the usual platitudes and look at the concrete skills, emotional resilience, and structural shifts required to build a future-proof child in Nigeria for today's world.
The idea is to be able to build or develop children that can function anywhere they find themselves, regardless of the country, Nigeria, overseas, and all that. And it helps build their life skills. They are able to encounter challenges, and they're able to think through it rather than just give up or think just maybe within a textbook that they've seen. But practicalizing these things, helps them bring up practical solutions.
What kind of art and entertainment are our children actually consuming? For a country with such a vibrant creative industry, there is a severe shortage of targeted programming and content for millions of Nigerian children. Even on special occasions, only a few select institutions consciously try to fill this gap.
We really have to be intentional about ensuring we have more for children.
According to acclaimed filmmaker Niyi Akimolayan, this is a failure on multiple fronts.
If we're not making quality children and family content, we will not make a case for why those things should be out there. Everyone has a role to play. The British government spends over £1 billion every year on CBBS, those children programming. That is why there's Peppa Pig everywhere in the world. That is why your kids want to speak British English.
Meanwhile, the children themselves are eager, practically begging to be trained and developed.
I would like to tell them that they should always take care of their children so that they can eat the fruit of their labor, and they should enjoy more from them.
True inclusion means giving children in rural or marginalized spaces the exact same survival tools as those in urban private schools. Clearly, on a day dedicated to their future, society must stop talking, decide on a path forward, and take immediate action in their best interest.
Meanwhile, parents in Port Harcourt, the River State capital, are calling on the federal government to address the growing economic hardship facing families as Nigeria marks this year's Children's Day celebration. Our correspondent Deborah Miefi-Beresima, who went around the city to monitor the celebration, reports.
May 27 yearly is celebrated as Children's Day, a time to honor the next generation and recommit to their health, education, and safety. But in Port Harcourt, the tone of this year's celebration has shifted. With government-sponsored festivities absent, families are navigating a challenging economic climate just to give their children a reason to smile. Usually, this day is marked by official government-led celebrations. But across Port Harcourt, that template was missing. In its place, the private sector stepped in. Despite the government's absence, fun sports across the metropolis are bustling. With many public events off the calendar, corporate-sponsored parties have become a lifeline for families, particularly those underprivileged, who would otherwise have been priced out of the festivity. But for many parents, the day is bittersweet. While they are determined to create memories, they aren't ignoring the economic realities. The sentiment is clear. The soaring cost of living is taking a toll on household budgets.
Due to the economic hardship, it affected the party a bit. Seriously, not even a bit, because things are so dear. So the little ones that I have, I can able to afford. Though the celebration does not go on well the way it ought to be, because of there is no money.
For these parents, the ask is simple. They want the government to move beyond symbolic gestures and address the economic hardship that is making it increasingly difficult to provide for the most basic needs of their children.
If not for something like this, I don't think many children can afford this. I want the government to at least let them help the economy, to boost the economy, so that even the ones that can't afford this, they can also participate in such things. Like today, many children are at home because they don't have funds to go out. And most of them, they don't know about such thing, that this kind of thing is happening today.
For the children, today is about laughter and play. But for the adults watching over them, it serves as a stark reminder of the mounting pressure on the Nigerian home. Deborah Miye-Fiberesima, Channels Television News.
Over now to Benin City, the Edo state capital, where health authorities have refuted claims that some children died during yesterday's Children's Day celebration at the Samuel Ogbemudia Stadium. The chief medical director of the Edo Specialist Hospital, Dr. Antonia Njoku, who addressed journalists today, dismissed social media reports claiming that 5 pupils died during the event. She explained that several children were rushed to the hospital after the incident and were placed on the floor for emergency resuscitation due to the urgency of the situation, but all the affected children have now been stabilized and discharged. The coordinator of the Office of the First Lady, Mrs. Desili Anani, also visited the hospital on the directive of the governor. She confirmed that the children are in good condition and commended the hospital staff for their swift response. And outside the shores of Nigeria, as the 2026 Global Alliance Annual General Meeting ends in Prague, Czech Republic, President of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, Mr. Ike Neliaku, has been re-elected into the board of the highest global public relations body to serve an additional 2-year tenure. Speaking after his re-election in Czech Republic, Mr. Neliaku says the re-election is a clear demonstration of value that Nigeria has brought to the table in the last 1 year of election into the board, stressing that it is an honor for the nation, especially now that the country is preparing the stage to stage the World Public Relations Forum in November this year. Mr. Neliaku, who also made presentations on future-proofing public relations and the WPRF, says Nigeria is ready to set a new benchmark for hosting the World Public Relations Forum as a premium global event.
Has just been re-elected into the board of Global Alliance for Public Relations and Communication Management. I consider it an honor, not just to me, but to the Federal Republic of Nigeria. You recall that last year we were elected for a term of 1 year, which will expire in June, but surprisingly, we got re-elected at the annual general meeting for a term of 2 years. So it's like a promotion. From 1 year, we are now given the mandate to be on the board for 2 years. This is very important and very significant to Nigeria because it shows the level of confidence that the Global Alliance platform is having on Nigeria. One would have thought that having served for the first term of 1 year that some other persons, but I would say that my election was unopposed. And for me, it's a demonstration of the level and the quality of contributions we have made to the board of Global Alliance since we joined the board last year. The result of good work is more work.
And that's it from Abuja. It's now back to Ayo for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you so much, Victoria. Representatives of Niger Delta communities have called for an amendment of the Petroleum Industry Act 2021 by increasing the statutory funding from 3% to 6%. The group made this request today during a high-level joint retreat and stakeholder dialogue organized by the House Joint Committee on Host Communities in collaboration with Public Petitions Committee held in Owerri, the Imo State capital.
They've come from different parts of the Niger Delta region, and their mission is simple. First, to discuss with members of parliament, and then to find lasting solution to the lingering development problem bedeviling their communities.
Niger Delta region.
Emphasizing the importance of their communities as established by the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021, they seek for an upward review of the statutory royalties due to them from 3% to 6%.
This we know will further improve the fortune of the host communities. And we also have an opportunity today to lend our voices to that request, to that demand.
In his keynote, Professor of Energy and Comparative Environmental Law, Samuel Dike, describes the PIA as a watershed in the history of the Niger Delta, saying for the first time the people of the region are recognized as important stakeholders in the petroleum value chain.
The law says if after 30 days, host community trust is not incorporated in a particular community, such defaulting settler will have to pay $2,500 per day. So you can enforce this.
He is also quick to point out the misinterpretation of sections of the provisions of the law, one of which is the pipeline surveillance contract, the contract held by the Tantita Security Services Nigeria Limited.
For me, this is a contractual arrangement between two parties, the federal government through the NNPC and the Tantita Security Company Limited. In law, before there can be a binding contract, there must be agreement between two parties, and there are terms and conditions to be fulfilled. There must be offer, there must be acceptance, there must be consideration, there must be intention to create a legal relationship. And if all of these elements are found in a given transaction or relationship, there is a binding contract. And I felt Tantita had met these conditions.
Recalling their efforts to push for better treatment of the host communities in the Niger Delta, the representative, although appreciative of the improvements so far, calls for more.
If you count all the wells that in Niger Delta, who are the people that operate it? They are outsiders. But let us just operate for it. Team up as we are teaming up down. To go and what? Ask for the licenses and operate and become a company owner to operate on the well. Not as people who are teaming up to become a megad.
They are not here. The eyes have it.
The chair of the House Committee on Host Communities then moves the first motion for the affirmation of statutory decentralization under Chapter 3 of the PIA 2021, the clarification of Tantita Pipeline Surveillance Company as a private business arrangement, and cessation of all agitation.
The ayes have it.
The joint sitting also passed other motion, including one to sponsor the legislative amendment of the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021, strengthen the host community framework by increasing statutory funding provision from 3 to 6%.
Time for business news with Dominic Iwiwo.
Thank you, Ayotunde. And on business news, the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise says Nigeria's economy remains on a gradual recovery path despite persistent structural challenges. In a statement reacting to the Q1 2026 GDP report released by the National Bureau of Statistics, the CPPE says the 3.89% growth recorded in the quarter reflects improving macroeconomic stability, stronger investor confidence, and resilience across key non-oil sectors of the economy. However, despite the positive indicators, the economic and policy advisory firm warns that the contraction in the electricity sector alongside declines in aviation and persistent weakness in textiles exposes the fragility of Nigeria's productive economy. The organization asks government to urgently implement reforms in the power sector and put in place stronger support for manufacturers to improve the country's export competitiveness and inclusive GDP growth. Now, outside our shores, Kenya has overtaken Nigeria as Africa's leading destination for startup investments in 2026. And this is according to the latest report by Africa, the Big Deal. The finding by the independent platform, which tracks and publishes venture capital funding activities across Africa, highlights that Kenyan startups attracted $984 million in funding last year, which represents a 52% increase from the previous year and has pulled 1/3 of all startup investments recorded across the continent. The report cites that the headline number was heavily driven by debt financing, which accounted for $582 million, or about 60% of the total amount raised, while African startups collectively raised $3.1 billion last year, up from $2.2 billion raised in 2024. With fewer than 3% of Nigerian adults carrying any form of insurance coverage, insurance penetration hovers between 0.3% and 0.5% of GDP, one of the lowest rates on earth. The president of the Nigerian Council of Registered Insurance Brokers, who was a guest on our Business Morning program, listed some of the factors deterring the penetration and expectation that the Nigerian Insurance Industry Reform Act 2025 would change the trend. Africa Airlines have seen a 7.7% year-on-year rise in air cargo demand in April this year, and this is according to the latest report released by the International Air Transport Association, IATA. In its global air cargo market data for the month, the global aviation body says the increase reflects sustained growth in freight activity across the continent's aviation sector. IATA attributes overall market performance to a complex operating environment, including geopolitical disruptions in the Middle East, higher fuel and oil prices, and shifting global trend dynamics. The International Airlines Operation Body points out that African airlines have remained among the stronger performing regions since the final months of 2025, as demand continues to grow despite tightening capacity conditions. Nigeria's stock market is still closed for the second day of the Eid el-Kabir celebrations, but its major global contemporaries were open for trading. Let's find out how they ended Tuesday's session. That's it on Business News. Back to Ayotunde for the rest of the news at 10.
Many thanks, Dominic. U.S. and Iranian negotiators have reached a tentative deal to extend the existing ceasefire for 60 days, pending approval by the leadership of both countries. Here's Simon Pusey from our London studio with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has said it targeted an American airbase in the region after fresh US strikes on southern Iran overnight. Kuwait, which hosts a US base, said it had intercepted hostile missile and drone threats, but did not confirm the target. The Iranian missile launch came after the US shot down Iranian drones over the Strait of Hormuz and struck a military site in Bandar Abbas, a strategic port city in southern Iran. It is the second time in 3 days that the US has attacked targets in Iran, saying they were conducted in self-defense. The renewed hostilities threaten a fragile ceasefire between Washington and Tehran. 16 students have been killed in a fire at a boarding school in Gilgil, around 120 kilometers west of the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. 74 other students are being treated in hospital after being injured. The fire at the Utumishi Girls' School started in the early hours of Thursday morning when the students were asleep, according to the Kenya Red Cross and police. Police said search and rescue operations were underway, with authorities yet to establish the cause of the fire. The Kenyan Red Cross said emergency responders were on the ground to offer support. Israel has hit the Lebanese capital Beirut for only the second time since the start of a ceasefire last month. The Israeli Defense Forces said the attack at around 2 p.m. was carried out in a targeted manner, but gave no details. Israeli media cited unnamed sources as saying the target of the strike had been the head of the Iranian militia. Israel had spared Beirut at the request of the US, and the attack came after waves of Israeli strikes aimed at Hezbollah infrastructure in southern Lebanon, according to the IDF. Both Israel and Hezbollah, the powerful Shia group supported by Iran, have accused each other of repeated violations of a ceasefire.
I wasn't horrified, I was frightened.
The former US First Lady Jill Biden says she thought her husband, President Joe Biden, was having a stroke during his infamous faltering presidential debate in 2024.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID.
President Biden faced intense pressure from fellow Democrats to step down as their candidate after the poor debate against the then Republican candidate Donald Trump. Biden ultimately dropped out of the race. The former First Lady's interview with CBS News Sunday Morning's Rita Braver will air on Sunday. Jill Biden was considered to be one of his most influential advisors during his presidency and among those who ultimately encouraged him to drop out of the 2024 race.
I don't know what happened. I mean, as I watched it, I thought, oh my God, he's having a stroke. And it scared me to death.
A woman with links to the Islamic State group who returned to Australia from Syria last year has been charged with being a member of a terrorist organisation and entering a declared conflict zone. The 34-year-old arrived in Australia in September along with another woman, police said, and has appeared in a Melbourne court on Thursday. The announcement comes after two groups of women and children arrived in Australia a few days ago after spending years in the Al-Roj camp in northeast Syria, where families of IS fighters have been held since 2019. The Australian government is suing the US manufacturing giant 3M, $1.4 billion over its alleged use of toxic forever chemicals in firefighting foam that contaminated dozens of defence bases across the country. It is the largest legal claim ever brought by the government. It claims 3M withheld and misrepresented details about the foam and its environmental impact, assuring them it was safe despite knowing otherwise. In response, 3M said it had never made PFAS in Australia and stopped selling the foam there 20 years ago. And preparations are underway at the White House South Lawn for an upcoming Ultimate Fighting Championship event.
On one night and one night only.
The cage fight is scheduled to take place on the 14th of June. Donald Trump said UFC President Dana White, a longtime ally, will build a 5,000-seater arena right outside the front door of the White House, along with 8 large screens in a nearby park for fans to watch from a distance. It's the latest divisive building work being done at the White House, which has sparked controversy, following on from the paving over of the Rose Garden to the demolition of the East Wing and plans for a $400 million ballroom. The new temporary structure will host a UFC event to mark the nation's 250th anniversary and President Donald Trump's 80th birthday. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome to Sports News. The Ballon d'Or ceremony for 2026 will take place for the first time in London on October the 26th to mark the 70th anniversary of the trophy being awarded to England's Stanley Matthews in 1956. The most prestigious individual prize in football is an award that for many years had been dominated by Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. PSG winger Ousmane Dembele won last year in a ceremony held in Paris. And Brazil forward Neymar is a doubt for the start of the World Cup after injuring his calf, requiring 2 to 3 weeks of treatment. The 34-year-old Santos star will miss Brazil's 2 pre-World Cup friendlies against Panama and Egypt, but may also be out of their tournament opener against Morocco on June the 13th. The national team's Dr. Rodrigo Lasma confirms an MRI scan identified a grade 2 muscle injury. That's sports. It's back to you, Ayo.
And the main news again. The presidential candidate for the African Democratic Congress, Atiku Abubakar, has met with major rival and former Rivers State Governor Rotimi Amechi in Abuja hours after winning the party's nomination to contest the 2027 presidential election. And troops of the Guards Brigade have reiterated their resolve to intensify the fight against terrorists, bandits and kidnappers within their area of responsibility. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun, and do have a good night.